Something that I say along the way will touch you. I know it. Let's begin that process of crafting a meaningful life.
Here's Mary Crafts.
Good morning, and welcome back to Crafting a Meaningful Life. I'm Mary Crafts, and I'm so happy to be with you this morning. Several weeks ago, I put out on my social media just a small little quiz that said, here are four topics that you might be interested in. Let me know which one really strikes home with you. Which one is going to move you down that road of taking charge of your life and crafting your life? And I said, and if there's one that I haven't listed, by all means, just give me your own example. And it was interesting. I had so many wonderful responses on each and every one that I had listed. I also had some great suggestions. People came in and asked things. I just want to know your story of how you got to this spiritual path you went. I mean, like, okay, that's a very personal story, but I can do one on that. But one of my questions has to do with my guest today. One of the questions that I put out, if they were interested in hearing, was, how do I find healing and peace after divorce? And I'm a bit of an expert on that, not as much of an expert as my guest. And when it came down to this, so many people had wanted to hear about this. I thought, I need some really expert advice on this. And so, because of that, I've invited my dear friend Jill Coil on the podcast with me today. Jill, welcome, darling.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's always a pleasure. You're a doll. I love you.
So let's start by telling people what makes you an expert on peace and healing after divorce.
Yeah, so I've basically dedicated my life to the mission of recognizing that divorce is not the end, and actually, it could be a platform to be used to become a better version of yourself that you didn't even know was possible. But my journey to get here was a little bit unorthodox because I wanted to be a lawyer. And I kind of fell into family law. And so I have been now doing divorces as a family law attorney for over 15 years. And I've done thousands of divorces where I've really been able to see the impact emotionally, financially, physically it does on people. And I've been able to see the aftermath of that. But I also, in year 4 of my marriage, my husband walked out on me and said, I'm done. I don't want to be married anymore. And so I went through that emotional process of trying to deal with that. We had 2 small kids at the time, and dealing with the new normal and how I was going to recover from that. And we ended up not getting divorced. We ended up reconciling and fixing our issues, and we've been married now 15 and a half years. But through those experiences, I've really been able to lend a different level, what I find, of advocacy for clients going through divorce, in that I'm not here to just fight and help you through the anger, and but I'm here at a different level to really recognize that divorce doesn't have to be this shameful subject, and we're going to get through it in a different way, and in a way that's going to make you stronger. So
A lot of divorce attorneys are there with that litigation thing in their mind. They're out to fight. They're litigators. They love to get their, win for their client. But you offer something very different. You are there to fight for your client, and I've seen that in action, and I've seen you fight for what you believe in, and I wouldn't want to be up against you, I can say that. But you're more than that. You are this empathetic, compassionate heart. In fact, you've even written an entire book on this, called No One Dies from Divorce. I had 2 copies of that book, Jill, and I was the other day with someone who was just going through this process. And I said, I think I have a book for you I'd like you to read. And I gave it to her. This was about 3 weeks ago. And I just got a text from her yesterday. And she said, that was the most helpful thing for me because I had no hope. And as I look at this divorce process, I think that's one of the things I was most surprised at when I went through my divorce, that people that just came out of the woodwork and said, oh "Oh my gosh, my marriage is just like that. Oh, I don't know how to get out of here. I'm so afraid of this and that and that. How did you deal with this?" That to have a resource like that book of yours to go to and to have an attorney like yours, I think one of the questions that you must be asked the most, and maybe they're past that by the time they call you, is they're asking the question, "Should I get a divorce? Is this the best thing for me?" So when people come in and they still have that question in their mind, where do you go with that?
I think that by the time they pay the $300 for the consult with me, they've already made the decision. But what's interesting is that a lot of times they can't articulate the why. And I've thought a lot about that because I'm thinking, you don't go buy a car without going through the process of understanding why you need the car or what's the benefit of this car. I mean, obviously sometimes we splurge and do things that make us feel good, but it's interesting to me that people can make the most important decision of their life, which divorce would be next to who you marry, but not be able to articulate the specific whys. um, I think it's really important to be able to answer that question for yourself in the process of healing. Because if you can clearly delineate the reasons why this divorce makes sense, then it does two things. First of all, it helps you really understand you need the divorce because that's it. But then, second of all, it helps you be able to take those issues and fix them so that when you move forward in the divorce, you're fixing issues that you can become a better whole person that were missing in the marriage. So I wrote my first chapter on it. What are the questions you should be asking about why you should get divorced? There are some reasons why it's no question. Divorce necessary. But then there's sometimes it's, hey, have you tried this? Have you really gone through this? Because sometimes divorce isn't the sometimes it's never the easiest option. So if there's a way or an opportunity for you to fix things that you haven't tried, it's always it's a good thing to think about that. Do it, try, so that when the divorce comes, it's like, okay, I've tried everything. It's not going to work. Um, Now, on the other hand, in Mary's situation, I would never suggest waiting 30 years to figure that out, which is why I wrote my book. So if you are thinking about get divorce and you're really wanting to get those clear reasons of why I should leave, I wanted to give people like Mary, like you, the opportunity to read that at year 7 or 8 and say, I need to get out now. I'm not going to wait until 30 years and half my life is gone to get the courage to do that. So that's what I wanted to do, to give people courage to know that they're going to be okay.
I think you just hit the nail on the head with so many of us who wait and do our divorces and what you term the gray time. Yeah, right? When they're farther into the marriage, when it seems like they should be more sure about what they're doing, the divorce rate actually is like skyrocketing in today's world because we've put up with it, all that we're going to put up with it, and we're going to leave. And Jill, for me, and I think for so many women I talked to, that it was fear. And it wasn't for some people, for some women, it's fear of financial problems. How will I support myself? How will I take care of the kids? Those kind of things. And because I had my own company, I didn't stay out of financial fear. I stayed out of my fear of being a failure, a fear of not being enough to take care of my children and be a full time career person. And I just kept saying that any dad was better than no dad. Because I feared, why is that the case? If you're not enough yourself.
Yeah.
And that basic fear, uh, really is with so many women. And it's not just the fear of, um, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to support myself." It's much deeper than that.
Well, fear comes from an unknown question. You can't answer something, therefore we show fear. We show fear in situations where we don't know what's around the bend, or we don't know this person that's following us. It's fear comes from an unanswered question. And so my thing is if you are stuck in that fear stage, it's time to start finding answers to those questions. Why are you fearful? Because there's always a solution. I love the term everything's figure outable. Um, so the second thing we see a lot is that people live in their victimness, right? And they make excuses. And I say, and I put this in my book, but excuses are the blocks that create brick walls that keep us from moving forward. And so I hate the word but, right? When you say, I really like your how your hair looks today, but you know that that's going to then come with something negative. So if we can take the but statements out of what, the excuses of living in our victimness, and we start answering our questions, you're going to recognize that the brick wall that you just put in front of yourself is going to go away. And you're going to be able to obtain the courage to start moving forward. And sometimes it's just a breath at a time. Sometimes it's baby steps. Sometimes we end up getting to the point where we can walk and then run. But it is possible, but it's going to start with you.
Mm. I've had a lot of people ask me, um, Mary, you seem to have weathered this divorce. You seem to have come out on the higher end. You seem to be, more okay than you were. How did you do that? And I think that that's exactly what you just said, that I never allowed myself to be in victimhood. That, oh, now my life is ruined, or if I just hadn't have ever gotten into that marriage, or if this had happened, or, poor me, poor me. But I took accountability for where I was. And I knew that every day I stayed there was my choice until it was my choice to leave. But as long as we see ourselves as victims and out of control and unable to make anything else happen in our lives, we stay stuck and we don't heal. That is the biggest, for me, the biggest key to the healing piece is taking charge of your own life. And the great news about being accountable for everything in your life is that you can change it. If you don't like what you've got, you can change it and you can bring something else into your life. And that's why I love being accountable. I love it.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard, but at the end of the day, when you recognize that the power comes within you to be happy and to, just like you said, move forward and take charge, like it's all in your control. Once you recognize that, it's so empowering because so many of us want to just sit and blame the other person. But when we recognize that we can turn the finger on us and we can be in charge of our feelings, we can be in charge of how we're going to deal with this emotion today and how we're going to deal with this issue today, it becomes really powerful. One of the things that I researched for my book was the ability for us to become happy. The hedonic adaptation cycle is a study that has happened to show that we as human beings are able to bounce back and find same level of happiness after trials. And we're talking major trials, the death of a child, the death of a spouse, you know, really bad things. Because when you rank trials, a lot of times divorce ends up, below like the death of a child. Um, but really it is a massive trial, but we have the ability as human beings to bounce back from that. And not only that, the studies show that we're able to come back from that trial and be at an even higher level of happiness. And when that comes into divorce, I say absolutely. You have the ability to be happier and thriving better than you were ever in the marriage, so long as you take charge to figure out what do you need, what makes you happy, and you take that accountability and take on your personal responsibility of figuring that out. Um, and that's pretty cool, right? That lends that hope to all of your listeners that are like, I don't know if I can ever be happy again. Oh, yes. Yes, you can. Just like breathing, you don't have to think to breathe, your brain does it. Your brain can recover from tragedy and can make you happy again. The process of getting there is all in your control. And you believing that is the first step.
And I love that piece about how that this is a step to in your happiness level rather than seeing divorce as this horrible thing that you failed at, and rather than seeing it as the end of life as you know it, and will your family ever be healed, and will your children still love you, all those things, you can see it as a gift. And when you have a gift given to you of freedom to be 100% in charge, it's like I try and look at all the things that happen in my life now as gifts. The pandemic I looked as a gift, and if it's a gift, what do I do with it, and how do I learn from it, and how do I grow from it? If being alone and and not having somebody to go to bed with me every night is a gift, then how is that a gift? And is it a gift that I can get up in the morning and not have to worry about what my day looks like, and when he's gonna walk in the door, or when I'm gonna come home, and is it gonna be brutal again, and when is he gonna lose his temper again? Not having to worry about those things anymore in my life, I can tell you right now, is one of the greatest gifts that I've ever given myself. And I cherish it, and the fear that I felt was really a made up fear. They weren't real. And the real things were that I am healthier, I am happier, I'm more the woman that I know that I am inside, that I have meant to be, and that I have a message of hope for all women. I didn't divorce. Actually, my divorce was not final until I was 56, even though I started the process much earlier. But and that's why I've always said I'm gonna live to be 105, because I need as many years on that side as I had on this side, right? And, it's but it's not easy, and I don't want to belittle those women who are still in that vacillating stage, or who have just started down the road, and the road looks so dark and scary, and especially women that maybe have gone through it a second time and think, "Is it all me? Am I just a failure?" What's wrong? And I hear that question. I wish I had a dime for every time I heard this question. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me that I can't keep a marriage? I can't make a marriage work. What do you say, Jill, to people who say that to you?
Marriage doesn't define you. Even now, like when people say, "Oh, we're in such a good marriage," I'm like, "What is it? What is that? Who cares?" Whether you're in a good marriage, whether you're in a bad marriage, whether you're in a mediocre marriage, we all have struggles. We all have deficiencies in who we are. I don't care how your marriage is. I want to know how you are. And that's how we should be defined. Especially now in the 22nd, 21st century, like the marriage doesn't define us at all. Marriage can't even be defined on exactly what it is. There's so many different definitions of it now. What's more important is who are you? Who are you as a person? And so many people want to define their happiness with how well their marriage is doing. And I'm like, that's your first direct line to divorce is when you're dependent on your marriage's health for your own happiness or your own mental health. Because at the end of the day, the marriage is just a crux, right? It's actually a weight that weighs on you. And unless you're a whole person yourself, you're mentally strong, you know who you are, the marriage is just going to drag you down because no marriage is easy. So so I tell women, especially that, who don't know who they are, like, well, this is the time to figure that out because guess what? You're worthy of that. You're deserving of that. You were never defined in that marriage to never think about yourself or to, not do things that make you happy. But, we're women, right? We just put our head down and take care of everybody else. But that connotation in marriage needs,
Put the nose on the grindstone and don't lift it up.
yeah,
That's the spot.
yeah. And that just needs to get kicked out the door because That's bullcrap. You deserve all the happiness. You deserve to know who you are, what you want, and you should be able to do it on your terms. Um, and then the marriage comes to elevate that. The best partner in a marriage is the person that is your cheerleader, supporting you for exactly who you are. When you are in a marriage where you're expecting to change the other person, you're in a failed marriage.
Could you just say that one more time? Because I think that's the most important thing for every woman to hear.
If you're living in a marriage where somebody is expecting you to change, or you're expecting the other person to change, you are in a failed marriage.
Yep. I went into my first marriage absolutely seeing the problems that he had and thought, "What? My love will fix all this. It'll all be better." And I went into my second marriage, even though it was very short, and he had the idea, "Oh, well, Mary will do this and Mary will do this once we're married. She won't do this and she won't do that." And I remember when I first found out that, really made the decision to not stay with him, his first response to me was, "I always thought you'd change." I'm like, "Yeah? What part of me looks like I don't like who I am and that I'm happy with the woman I am? I'm sorry, I'm not gonna be wearing flats and a corduroy jumper and a lacy blouse, down to my ankles. That's just not who I am. I don't know why you thought that I was ever gonna go back to that." And we realized we had shared so little in common. I think one of the things, Jill, that I also learned through the different relationships that I've had is that I definitely was a rebounder. If I went out of a marriage or simply a relationship that I had with somebody, I didn't spend enough time on me to heal. I simply looked for the next one. And I didn't heal in the meantime. And so when I went into the next relationship or the next friendship or the next marriage, I'm still like not a true functioning person on my own. And I always think that it's like, these two trees. And, if these two trees have grown so that they only are like this, leaning on each other, that when one lets you down or goes away, you're going to fall as well. But if you can stand like this and you're a whole person on your own, and they're a whole person on their own, and you choose to stand together, then think how strong you are against the wind and the struggles and the things that come at you in life. This, not so strong. This, very strong. And if one goes away, you're still standing. And as I came to that understanding, I knew that I had to work on myself, which was part of the whole journey that I went through with my weight loss. It wasn't because I found some silver bullet or some diet. It was because I learned to stand on my own. And when I let go of the fears of being alone, I let go of my fears of so many things. I didn't need the protectionism of my weight anymore. And it literally just kind of came off. I mean, it took me 6 years, but it literally was not this huge, hard thing I had to go through because I was standing on my own.
It's interesting too. I mean, if you look at the history of women, the history of marriage, um, it's always been that women are to be supported by their husbands. I mean, Christian, since the beginning of time. I mean, it's been ingrained in us that that the male is the provider and the protector, and the women are the homemakers. It's been drilled in us in our cultural and our religious backgrounds. Um, and if you look at the history of that, you see the oppression that women have had to deal with, that we still deal with a gender gap, and what we're having to deal with. And so when I look at the problems we're having in divorce, it's this whirlwind of problems that we've had from the beginning of time. And so it's not going to just be this easy. We're going to wake up one day and women are just going to recognize this. It's going to be continually to be women like you and I, Mary, who are continually telling women that they are deserving of this, that you don't need to go into a marriage expecting anything from your counterpart. You don't have to have expectations of gender roles in a marriage. That those are things that can be defined in whatever way you and your husband believe is best for you guys. um, and so I'm going to continue to tell people that there should be no expectation in marriages of who should do this or who should do that. And I got so much grief dating in Utah, wanting to go to law school. I got so many men that were like, well, you can't go to law school. I got to go to school. Like, you've got to go work and support me. And I just remember looking at them like, luckily, I guess I just have an amazing, strong mom that just taught me that that's bullcrap. Like, I wasn't ever going to find that. And I remember when I found Ryan and I was in law school already, he always cherished the fact that I knew who I was and I knew what I wanted. And so when I look at women that are still trying to find that, I'm like, listen, you don't have to be like me or Mary. Like, you don't have to be right here yet. But I need you to continue to hear me when I say that you are worth happiness. Like, you are deserving of it. And whatever your process is to get to where me or Mary are, it's okay. We're not saying that there's a defined road that you need to get there. But if you can look up and you can say, you know what, you're right, I am deserving of this, I promise you, you'll get there. I promise you, you'll get there.
It does truly begin, Jill, that peace that women are looking for of healing and peace after divorce. Obviously, we should be looking at it before divorce, but those who are currently looking at it after divorce, it has to begin with you. If you're still looking for that knight in shining armor to rush in and make your life like Cinderella and you're going to live happily ever after, it's time to wake up. Can you just like come visit us and we'll slap you around a little bit and get you to kind of wake up that that's not the choice of life. That's why neither mothers aren't given magic wands and fairy godmothers, because we would do that to our children. We would say, no trials for you. You get to be exempt. Hi, you get to have a perfect life. As a mother, I would absolutely have used that wand. I know it. You know what I mean? But now I know that all the things that my children passed through and I passed through were the exact things we needed to become the people we are. And that the things that have allowed us to stand now in peace is self love. I mean, we hear that word so much. And we think that, especially in Utah, I don't know if it's just in Utah, Jill, but it certainly is predominantly here, that if you think of yourself first, that makes you what? A narcissist. And we don't want to be that. Oh my gosh. And so we think of everyone else first and we put ourselves last. And for me, that was one of the biggest changes that I made. I began at age 50, even though I wasn't divorced, to put myself first. And for the first time in my life, believe that I could go to the gym and it wasn't taking away from my family. That I could eat and purchase the foods that I wanted to eat that weren't necessarily what my kids wanted to eat. That I really could have 2 meals at night and it was okay. They wanted to have pizza and macaroni and cheese, that was okay. I could have a healthy salad with salmon on top. It was okay to choose. And to continue that process to choose me, um, is a very healing thing. And if we only look outside ourselves for our happiness, it'll probably elude us for the rest of our lives.
Mhm. And I look at my situation where I have still 4 young kids. And sometimes I wonder, are the, because I choose me all the time. I have to do that for what I am and who I am, and so sometimes that means that I'm not putting my kids necessarily first on the, list of things that I need to deal with that day. And so sometimes I go through that, am I hurting my kid? But at the end of the day, I'm looking at my kids as they get older, especially my 13-year-old daughter, and I'm like, man, I love the independent, secure woman she's becoming. And I can't help but think that's got to be because she's watching me be that secure person where I can tell my kids, listen, I'm not dealing with you right now. I'm over here doing my emails and I will get to you in a minute, by teaching them that it's okay to prioritize me. Um, and we're not perfect at the way we do it. But I do know that by me doing this, I'm at least teaching my kids that I'm showing up as my perfected self. And trust me, it's not perfected, um, but that's what I'm going to do, and I hope they turn out great, and I sure love them and I'm proud of them, um but at the end of the day, I know that I'm fulfilling my cup because that's the only way I can be there and show up for my kids as well. And my husband and my family and my
That's
job.
exactly it, yeah. The only way you can truly show up for another person is if you show up for yourself first, fill your cup and make sure that you're solid and whole. And then, wow, look at all you are filled with to love your children, support them, support your husband, support your neighbors, your friends, your colleagues at work, because your cup is full and you're doing it from this solid place rather than this subservient place, and you're never gonna find peace there. You're constantly gonna feel. I want you women out there right now to stop and just say, "Do you ever feel like there's too much being asked of you? Do you ever feel like there's no way I can get all of this done? I'm failing at being a mom." If you're asking yourself those questions, chances are it doesn't mean you need to give more outside of you. Chances are it means you need to give more inside of you. And I I went through so much regret when I was married, Jill. So much regret of, oh my gosh, I'm not spending enough time with my children, or I'm not there at every single soccer practice, or I'm not there for this, or well, oh my, I had to work this event tonight, and they were already in bed when I came home. Constant, constant regret. And regret is the worst of the human emotions because you can do nothing about it unless it motivates you then to look at your life and say, well, what do I want in my life? And how can I find balance? I think that balance question, I think you and I both know that's kind of a bunch of bogus stuff that we find. It's not a matter of ever finding balance. It's a matter of getting everyone to play together in this great orchestra. Sometimes the string section plays and sometimes the acoustics play, but we all play together and we find out what works best for all of us. And this is a note for you, Jill. You said sometimes I look at my 13-year-old now that I'm at this end of the spectrum and I look at who my children are, who else would I want them to be? They are really, literally, if I could have designed them, they are people of integrity. They are people who are very service oriented. They have a tremendous work ethic. Where do you think they got that from? They aren't the typical 30-year-olds that are just like floundering around, still living at home. They're like their own people. They are great mothers and great fathers. And in the end, you know what? They survived. And perhaps in that survival, they obtained these gifts of being stable, of knowing how to survive, of knowing how to manage through a situation where their parents were in constant turmoil. They set down a road for what they wanted to be and who they wanted to marry and what they wanted their marriage to look like long before they were ever of marrying age. And what I thought was the worst thing I could have done for them, in the end, probably was the best. so you can let go of that guilt and let go of that regret and just really embrace that this is your path. This is your journey. It's why I do this podcast. It's why you do your podcast, Jill, because we don't want people to get to the end of their lives. We don't want to get to the end of our lives and say, is that all there was? I mean, I was stuck in this marriage and now I'm going to die. Okay, great, thanks. You know, or that I never got to live one of my dreams. I never got to be anything I thought I would be. That's why we do what we do, is to say that it's possible. Share with me Share with me your why, Jill. Why you spend so much time. Obviously, you have a hugely successful and busy practice as an attorney, and you have a family. I know from personal experience, you don't do these podcasts because you want to make money.
Yeah.
Tell me about your why.
I just realized that I have more to offer and say than I can get to the one-on-one person that can come and meet with me. And I wanted to share with as many people as possible. And and you're right, it is, podcasts, a book, like they're not these lucrative deals that make money, social media, um, and I'm not doing it for that. But if I can reach one more person that I can offer that level of hope and put them on the right path to find themselves and become better, then I did my job. And, all the long nights and, um, really stressful points in my life and the trials I've gone through, at the end of the day, it's worth it. The time I spend away from my family doing stuff, it's worth it um, because at the end of the day, I know people need it, and I want to be there for them in whatever way I can.
You're a pebble that gets dropped every week into the pond, and both of us just look at the ripples and that we can't touch everyone ourselves, but if by dropping that pebble in the pond every week, we create this ripple effect where people are listening and learning and sharing a bit of wisdom, just like when I shared your book, and I loved the title, No One Dies from Divorce. That just I thought that was first of all, extremely clever, but next of all, a huge revelation to people. Life is not over. And just because of those things, I got to share them with someone who I know. And she said, well, what do I pay you for the book? And I said, you don't pay me anything. But the next person that you find who is struggling with what's next in her life, that you can share this with them. Or they can go on Amazon and buy it if you don't have a
Yeah,
copy.
yeah.
And your book is on Amazon, right?
Hmm. Yep. And it's
No,
in most local bookstores in Utah. If you walked
that's
in
a
and got it. Hmm.
oh, I love that piece, Jill. So thank you for dropping your pebble every week. Thank you for standing. Thank you for being who you are. You and I recently were at a political thing and we hosted women to take a look at Ali Isom for representative or senator from the great state of Utah. And as I sat there and watched you talk, I thought, I wish I had known at her age what I know now. And so I'm so I guess, I don't know, proud, happy, grateful that you are doing this now, offering these things to people to give them hope, to know that it's out there, that peace and healing is not only possible after divorce, it's the next step. It's the natural step if we choose it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh,
love that.
Thank you so much, Mary.
Thank you so much for being with me today, Jill. You are a gift to all of us, especially me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being your friend and getting to know your story. And I know that you're touching so many people with sharing and being so vulnerable. And I think that's the best part about being able to inspire is when we're able to show our vulnerable and authentic self. to show it's possible and it's not all pretty, you know? My social media is who I am. And sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I want to put a filter on my picture and I want to, let people, see a different reality. But at the end of the day, I want to stay true so that women, especially, can recognize that you can be your authentic self, and it is the best thing for us as a whole.
Absolutely. That pathway from living in fear to living in love, that pathway, as you walk along that path, at every step, there's a stone with a word on it. And that word is vulnerability,
Yeah,
nakedness, emotional truth. And every time you take a step forward and you look down and you see that, and you accept that that's who you are and you're willing to show, then you've made another step toward living a love-based life.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I love that about you. You're so real. I was glued to social media when you were reviewing Johnny Depp and whatever Amber. And
Yeah,
I tell you, that was the best thing. I loved seeing it because I couldn't watch TV and all that, but I just got the summary every day by listening to you.
thank you. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
You are such a gift. Thank you. Thank you for being with us today. And if you have any questions, by all means, continue to watch Jill's podcast, which is No One Dies from Divorce. Or you can go online and just order her book, No One Dies from Divorce. It can be on your doorstep tomorrow from Amazon. And my hope is that we've given you a bit of hope, a bit of light, a bit of place to look up to, that healing and peace is not only possible, but it is your next step in crafting your meaningful life. Thank you.